السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما نافعا. آمين. Alhamdulillah, we have completed the two muqaddimat about understanding the basic meanings of worldview construction, and some other important principles. From today, inshallah, we will take the components of the worldview, or the main questions which form the worldview. The first component is about ontology, or the question, what is? Understanding the reality. We have used Western terminology or Western connotations in order to make it easier to connect with the present thought or the present Western atmosphere. Otherwise, as I have always said, we have better terminology in Arabic, but I'm using the English terminology, which has always Greek and Latin roots, in order to connect with the present times. Okay, so we will see, once we discuss more about all components, we will see how the Western thought, even at the level of terminology, is weak. Okay, so when we use these terms on ontology, epistemology, and other terminology, we should not be focusing on the term itself, but the meaning behind the term. As they say in Arabic, la mushahata fil istilah. There is no mushaha in terminology. If the meaning is clear, or the purpose is understanding the meaning, the terminology can differ. So we should be focusing on the question which is behind that terminology. Okay, as we said, ontology, onto and logy, it has Greek and Latin roots. We will not go into that. So the question is, what is? And it is important to understand that all these components are interconnected. Okay, so the answers to the first component will solve the questions of the next component. Epistemology is connected with ontology. Ethics is also connected with epistemology and ontology. So it will be like a logical progression. Okay, so what we discuss today, we will take some aspects of it and unravel the mystery of the second component. What we discuss in the first and the second component, we will use it in explaining the third component, so on and so forth, because they are all interconnected. What is? Understanding the reality, understanding the being. In this question, or in this component of worldview, we talk about reality. Which we, in Arabic, we call it wujud. And we explained in the previous sessions that we are even better in terminology. So wujud is a better word than reality or existence. Existence. Wujud. Wujud comes from the root wajada, which means to find something, to discover something which is already there. So we are accepting as Muslims, we're accepting that something has an objective reality. It is already there, and we have to only discover it. Or in other words, we have to discover the meaning in it. And also we have to understand how are we connected to this reality. And these are the connotations of the word or the term wujud. And for the ultimate reality, God, we use the term mawjud. So which all comes from wajada, which means to discover, to find something. So at the terminological level itself, we are separated from other ideologies. We will explain how once we proceed. Okay, so our methodology, as we have explained in the previous session, will be focusing on understanding our claim, the claim of, or the claims of Islamic worldview. Okay, so we are not going into understanding Western philosophy or Western worldviews or ideologies. We will only use it for the purpose of comparison sometimes. Okay, our purpose is understanding our own legacy. So our methodology will be focusing on kulliyat, mentioning the principles in every component and understanding it, or the claims we have as Muslims. And in that understanding explanation, we will sometimes cross into the other ideologies, religions, Western perspective, only for the purpose of comparison, without going into details about that. Okay, so reality for us is wujud, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mawjud. If you study any book of Ilm al-Kalam and Aqidah, you will find the first attribute of Allah is wujud, that He exists, His existence. Okay, so we separate ourselves from philosophies which don't believe in the reality of existence. There are philosophies and ideologies which believe that maybe we are in a dream. And in the early philosophy, this ideology belonged to sophists. In Arabic, safsata. Our senses are not definitive. We cannot rely on our senses. So we don't know the existence around us, wujud, the universe, is it real or not? So we are in doubt. Muslims or Islamic worldview is separated from this philosophy and ideology, which does not believe in the reality of existence. Okay, for this reason, if you open, for example, any basic book of Ilm al-Kalam, like Al-Aqidah al-Nasafiyah, the first claim will be about reality of existence. For example, in Al-Aqidah al-Nasafiyah, the first claim is Haqa'iq al-Ashya thabita. Haqa'iq al-Ashya thabitatun. The haqa'iq, the realities of things, is established. So there is reality out there which has existence. What form of existence it has, what is the meaning of that existence, this is a different question. Okay, this is a very important claim. So we use the word or the term wujud or mawjud for reality. Wujud is finding of truth in existence. The opposite of wajd, wajd is the root word. The opposite of wajd is faqt, losing something, missing something. Okay, so this word carries all the meanings we have just explained. Okay, so existence is indeed God's gift, but in reality it is a gift that belongs only to God, who as it were lends it as a personal favor to us. Amana, trust, so that we can engage with existence, we can cultivate it, not rape it, Okay, because the modern Western scientific methodology has raped the existence, and we see the consequences. We see the grave consequences around us, and this is the main catalyst for the space research, searching for another planet, because we know, everyone knows that in future Earth will not be inhabitable because we have raped it. Human beings have destroyed the ecological balance. Okay, so knowledge from the Western perspective, or the methodology, Western methodology, has for the first time in history brought chaos to the three kingdoms of nature: the animal, vegetal, and mineral. And this chaos has been referred to in the Quran by the term fasad. Fasad, corruption. So mankind has destroyed nature because it does not believe in cultivating the nature in a positive way. Okay, so nature, existence for us is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it is wujud. It has meaning. As we said, wujud is the finding of truth in existence, the finding of meaning in existence, which is already there. Another aspect of this meaning, so after we have accepted that there is a reality which exists, it has existence, we have to understand the existence, we have to cultivate it for the betterment of humanity, we have to engage with it. It is also important to understand the meaning of existence. So when we say the world exists or the universe exists, it means only that it is coming into existence. It's coming into existence. So in philosophical sense, they say it is coming into existence between two durations. And even then, it is subject to annihilation, since the accident does not endure two durations. And others like them are continually being created to replace them. So this wujud, existence, is not existent or real, and it's fixed. This reality in existence is fixed, but it is coming into existence every moment. Okay, so this life and death, the process of life and death, is happening at the lower level of the existence. We see it on the higher level between human beings. We see people dying, people being born every day. We see plants dying, new plants grow every season, every day. We see it on a higher level. But this is happening at the core also, at the atomic level, the circle of life and death. Okay, so existence for us as Muslims also means coming into existence. Every moment, the circle of life and death is being repeated. New universe or new existence or new reality is coming into existence, and the old reality is perishing. Okay, so this is very important for Muslims to understand these basic meanings of existence, because later on we will connect it with the idea of God. Okay, for example, we said that reality for us, wujud for us, is not a permanent existence. It is the continuous existence. Every moment, the circle of life and death is being repeated. Later on, in the next component, when we talk about theology, we will connect it with the concept of God, inshallah. But here, these meanings of wujud will suffice. Okay, so as we said, this wujud, existence, because we are not using the word universe, we are not using the word space and time, we are not using the word world, for example, because for us Muslims, existence is more than that. there are other realms of existence which we believe in. There is the realm of souls, we have the realm of jinns, we have the angels, so on and so forth. That's why we a better word for better than universe or world is existence or wujud, or we can say reality. Even reality has problems. Okay, these are some meanings of the word wujud. And our responsibility, see, basically all these matters are at core, they are philosophical in nature. But we don't want to discuss philosophy. This is not a philosophy class, or we're not talking about only theoretical matters. We should also understand, or this is the main purpose, connecting it with our behavior. How does it affect our life? How can we change ourselves better and the ummah better by fixing our worldview, by fixing our theories, by fixing our ideology? This is the purpose. At a higher level, a philosophy may seem dry, but all philosophies are eventually manifested at the lower level of humanity. All philosophies affect a common human being on the road, knowingly or unknowingly. For example, take the example of the famous French philosopher René Descartes, who is considered very important in modern Western framework. His philosophy about mind or intellect is that at the core, all intellects are same. Uqul, aql, at the core is same. And if we reduce, of course, philosophy every philosophy is profound. So explaining it in a reductionist way has its problems. But to put it in an easier way, all uqul are same at the core. And aql develops by more information, by thinking processes, so on and so forth. But at the core, all uqul are equal. Now, a person can ask, why are we discussing this philosophy of uqul? How does it affect us? How does it affect my life? It is dry philosophy. It has no benefit. This is true when we only look at the higher level. We don't reflect on its manifestation. The manifestation, for example, in curriculum, in education, is very profound. In our times, the curriculum or educational policy or philosophy is based on the age group, age of the children, for example, not on their thinking capabilities or different intellectual capabilities. It is not based on that. So age group is, for example, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, or age group is 8, 9, 7. They will all have the same curriculum. They will all study the same subjects. Because at this age, they all have the same thinking capability. They all have the same aql. Okay. At age 10, for example, this aql develops further, but the age group 10, they all have the same. We will add more subjects, for example, or we will enhance the curriculum. But at that age group, all students will study the same subjects and the same curriculum. So this educational philosophy is based on the idea of Descartes about intellect. And you see how dry philosophy manifests itself and it affects our life. In Islam, when we talk about aql, we don't believe in this philosophy. We say aql, if we define it as a potential or energy or whatever, intellectual capabilities differ from person to person, even in children, not only in adults. So a particular child may have different capabilities. We have to discover those capabilities, and his curriculum, his education should be according to his level of intellectual capability. So we don't use the same stick or the same standard for everyone. So our educational methodology, if we work on that, if we devise a curriculum, maybe in future, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq, should be based on intellectual capabilities, not on the age group. Okay, this is one example. To put it in simple way, one example of how dry philosophy at a higher level affects us, affects everyone, affects our how we live our life, how we perceive things. Okay, so Muslims' reconstruction is not to abolish space and time or escape from it, as in some Eastern religious worldviews like Hinduism and Buddhism, and not an act of defiance and conquest, as in Promethean West, but a responsible act of submission. And let me repeat this. This is how we view the wujud, existence, how we interact with it. So Muslims' reconstruction of this wujud, interacting with it, cultivating it for the betterment of humanity. Muslims' reconstruction is not to abolish space and time or escape from it, as in Hindu, Buddhist spirituality or Eastern religious experience, and not an act of defiance and conquest, raping the nature, conquering the nature, because there is no meaning, there is no value, as in Promethean West, but a responsible act of submission. So we are responsible beings, and our act towards nature should be based on this responsibility and understanding the idea of amana. This wujud is an amana. Okay, so these are some meanings of wujud. Another important idea which is discussed in ontology is understanding the higher realities in this universe. As we have said, modern Western scientific methodology or empirical methodology has severed its ties even from its own legacy, from the Western antiquity, from the Greek philosophers, because they, or majority of them at least, they believed in God. They had some philosophies about this universe. It has all been reduced. So now, for example, exploring the universe either means seeing it with your eyes, you see the trees around you, you see the mountains, you explore, or maybe using a telescope and going to the higher realms of existence. Okay, so space exploration, and that's it. For example, when we see our galaxy and the solar system, the moon, now the expedition to Mars, and so on and so forth, does it add value to humanity? If we shift to the moon or to Mars or to any other planet, will it affect our humanity? How will it change us as human beings? What value will it add, basically, to us as human beings? This is a question. We raped this nature, and we will destroy Mars also if we don't think from a different perspective. So the modern Western ideology about universe, exploring universe, is more about sensory experience in a better way. So what you cannot see with your eyes, you can see it with a telescope. That's it. It does not have any framework. It does not have any framework or explanation about the structure of this universe. Like, for example, in Islam, we have the ideology or idea of 7 heavens. And then we have the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the idea of God above the throne, his names and attributes. In the Greek philosophy, they had this idea of 10 intellects. God is the primary mover. God is the main cause. Okay, they had cosmology, basically. They had the structure, even if it was based on speculation, it was based on uncertain knowledge, dhanni knowledge, but they had the structure. Aristotle talked about the realm below the moon and above the moon. If you study, you just Google it, you will find. But modern Western thought does not discuss about that. They don't know anything about the universe. They don't have any structure. That's why I said they have severed their ties even with their own legacy. Okay, so the philosophical as well as scientific development of the wujud into an interpretation of the nature of reality is nothing but a sophisticated elaboration of the ordinary level of reasoning and experience. This is a very important point. So all the scientific development, all the theories, the bubble telescope and stuff, it is sophisticated elaboration of the ordinary level of reasoning and experience. It does not go beyond that. It does not explain the structure of universe. It does not explain the meaning behind that structure, the philosophy behind the structure. It is only about what you cannot see with your naked eyes. You use a telescope in seeing that. So you see the galaxies, the stars being created, the black hole now, the discussion about that. And most of it is based on speculation. How do we know this bubble telescope is not showing us something? Or how do we make sure that we are not committing mistake in what we are seeing? Because the senses, they don't give us certain knowledge. Senses, they commit mistakes. And now we are using another intermediary between us and our senses. That is this machine, telescope. How do we know? So even if we are sure that what we are seeing is the reality, still it does not add any value to the humanity as whole. Now we know the galaxies, we saw how stars are being created, so on and so forth. How can we, if we don't have a theory of value, if we can't place this knowledge or information in that structure, it does not add any value. Okay, so it will only enhance more rape of the nature, or it will, which we call ease. It will make our life more easier, and we discover the potential of the nature. We use it to create ease for ourselves. And in that process, we are exploiting the nature. So we don't create that ease while maintaining the ecological balance or while creating that harmony with nature. We don't care about that. We rape it. That's why rape is the best word to explain this phenomenon. The second important area of discussion is in ontology, because we said ontology is about what we see, what we experience. So we have the su'al, the question of oneness and multiplicity. Al-kathrah. Oneness is al-wahdah. So in Islamic thought, of course, we believe in God, the nature of that God, how does he act, what are his names and attributes, how can we connect it with our life, is the topic of theology. Once you fix your ontology, you say the reality around me exists, it has a purpose, it must be, it's malleable, or malleability of the universe. It needs to be explored, used, because it has been created by God. It has a God. Okay. Then we move to the second question: who is this God? We are not discussing it here. We are only focusing on the reality. So the question of wahda and multiplicity. At the higher realm, God is one. So absoluteness of God. God is absolute. Or we can say, can use perfection here, perfection of God. God is perfect, one. But at the lower level, this universe is full of multiplicity or diversity, we can call it. So it is not perfect, it is imperfect. This is one of the main questions discussed in ontology, particularly Islamic ontology, because we believe in God. Okay, so the philosophies which don't believe in God, the questions become more difficult to answer. And the philosophies and the religions which believe in God, the questions are easier to answer. We will not go to that realm. So this is one of the main questions. If God is perfect, one, so at the high realm, it's oneness, and at the lower level, it's diversity. How do we connect this? How did the perfect God create an imperfect universe? Because only perfection follows from perfection. And if we say imperfect, imperfection follows from imperfection. Okay, so this duality, we can call it duality. How do we answer this question? So in Islam, basically, these questions are not only discussed by religions. Yeah, these questions are common between philosophy and religion. All religions have tried to answer these questions, particularly Christian theology. Okay, but we are not going into that. The point is that our scholars have approached these questions and answered and explained them in a more profound way. And this is the claim. The theories we have about these questions, or in response to these questions, are more profound, or better, or deeper. Okay, so at this level, we must emphasize some important principles of Islamic worldview related to this question. The first is duality. Duality, as we said. Reality is of two generic kinds, God and non-God, creator and creature. And this is basic to Islamic ontology. We believe that reality is dual in nature. Okay, the first order has but one member, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He alone is God, the eternal, the creator, the transcendent, the absolute. Okay, and the other realm is the creation, created by God. The two orders of creator and creation are utterly and absolutely disparate as far as their being or ontology, as well as their experience and careers are concerned. So they are separate. Now, this question of separateness here. God and non-God, whatever Allah has created, are separate. Neither can the creator be ontologically transformed so as to become the creature, nor can the creature transcend and transfigure itself so as to become in any way or sense the creator. Okay, so this veil cannot be lifted. Creator cannot be transformed as to become the creature, and the creature cannot transcend and transfigure and become creator. This is the first claim, which is very important. And all Muslim thinkers and philosophers, their understanding, explanation revolves around understanding this separateness. Okay, so what we're saying is the wujud, the existence around us, is real. It exists. It has purpose. Okay, it has been created. And who created it? God. This is the basic claim, which a common Muslim also understands at a lower level. But the question is understanding this separateness. God is separate from, so the creator is separate from the creation. How? How do other religions and philosophies understand this separateness? Okay, so we can say here we have only two philosophies or two theories. One is separateness, the other we can call it sameness. One is separateness, the other is sameness. Sameness, for example, in some Eastern religions or religious experiences, where God becomes human being. Okay, or God enters the realm of space and time. Sameness. And this is shirk in Islam. It does not fulfill the conditions of our worldview. And also in Semitic religions, for example, in Judaism, if you read the Old Testament, you will see how God enters the realm of space and time. He wrestles with some prophets. He becomes the even at the level of terminology, father. And the children of Israel are referred to as sons. And in Judaism, Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, God is always referred as plural, Elohim. Okay, so sameness in Hindu experience and Eastern religions. Christianity, no need to explain how God becomes human being and God at the same time. So we have this sameness, which we condone. We don't believe in it. In order to understand the meaning of this universe, God does not need to enter this universe, or God does not need to enter space and time, and creator and creation becomes the same. Okay, so we believe in separateness, but a unique kind of separateness. And you have to bear with me and reflect on what I'm saying, because we are engaging on a higher level. So we believe in separateness, but in a unique type of separateness. Why? Here we have three groups. If we talk about Muslims, number one is the philosophers. The Muslim philosophers like Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, and others, who championed the cause of the Greek philosophy or the Western philosophy. We have explained, we said Aristotle in Islamic philosophy is Al-Muallim al-Awwal, the first teacher. And the second teacher is Al-Farabi, because they explained and championed the cause of the Greek philosophers. Number two, we have Mutakallimin. Mutakallimun. The scholars of Ilm al-Kalam, who based their reasoning on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There may be influences from philosophers because they refuted the philosophers. They belong to the same higher tradition, but Ilm al-Kalam is based on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all evidences, irrespective of the terminology they used. Okay, otherwise there is no difference between Ilm al-Kalam and falsafa. If we say using aql in explaining these matters is falsafa, philosophy, then there is no difference. Mutakallimin used aql and philosophers also used aql. The only difference is philosophers based their rational methodology on the Greek philosophy, and they enhanced it. They disagreed on many matters. Ibn Sina, rahimahullah, does not agree with everything. Should we say rahimahullah or not? Wallahu a'lam. Because our scholars, some like Imam Ghazali and others, they have declared him a kafir. So we are not going into that. But in a higher framework, they are all Muslims. They believe in God, they believe in akhirah, they believe in they differ only in details. But the philosophers, they used rational methodology according to the Greek philosophy. Okay, so the Muslim philosophers, they search for evidences from Quran, because they are Muslims after all. They have to support their claim from religion. They search for evidences from Quran and Sunnah for their claims, which they already believe in. Okay, and mutakallimun, they base their aqli methodology and claims on the book of Allah. So this is the difference between ilmul kalam and falsafa. These are the two main groups of scholars who engaged in understanding these matters, understanding the worldview, understanding the philosophy, understanding the higher realities. From mutakallimun, we have two important scholars, which I have separated here. They belong to ilmul kalam, but they have their own unique methodology or understanding of these matters, particularly here understanding the reality and how do we connect God with this reality. They are Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Arabi, the famous Sufi, which the modern Islamic thought, or at least the revivalist thought, does not consider him anything. We will see once we proceed and explain, and we are still explaining. Yeah, we are not taking any. We are not accepting any claims, or we are not affiliating ourselves with anyone. We are just trying to understand what is happening. Okay, so remember this, inshallah. Keep this in mind once we proceed in our discussion. Okay, so this separateness, maintaining the transcendence of God, because God has to be separated from space and time. If God becomes like a human being, he is not God. What is the difference? So we have the absoluteness and transcendence of God has to be maintained. Okay, so that means we have to believe in some sort of separateness. God is separate from the creation. The creator is separate from the creation. We don't believe in sameness, any sort of sameness where God becomes the creation. Okay, but at the same time, we don't have to separate God from the creation so much that he becomes a retired God. This is a very important point. In Islamic ontology, God is involved in space and time. God is involved in history. Every moment. So our God, or the Islamic idea of God, is an active God who is involved, not a retired God. And for this reason, in the Quran, this fact has been emphasized many times. Okay, like in the Bible, in the creation process, we see that in the same areas, we see the differences. For example, in the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and rested on the 7th day. That's why the 7th day, Sabbath, Yawm Sabt, is the resting day. It is the day of the Lord. We don't have to engage, or this was the ruling for the children of Israel. Don't engage in any worldly activity, because God rested on this day. You also have to rest. You engage in worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has refuted this idea in many verses of the Quran in minute details, because this idea, it shatters the foundation of correct belief about God, because it makes God retired from from space and time. God has created this universe, and now he has nothing to do with this universe. Okay, and this is the idea which was adopted by the early Greek philosophers as well, in different ways, in modern age as well. So God is like a watchmaker who constructed a very sophisticated mechanical clock. Now it's running on its own. So in the beginning, yes, he constructed it, he made the rules, but it's running on its own. It does not need God now. And with further development, this watchmaker is blind, yani blind watchmaker. We refer to that book about atheism. Blind watchmaker. The concept of retired God, who does not involve in space and time, who does not involve in history. So for example, in Surah Fatir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, not in Surah, in Surah Qaf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah 38, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ وَمَا مَسَّنَا مِن لُغُوبٍ. And we did certainly create the heavens and earth and what is between them in 6 days. And there touched us no weariness. Lughub. And in Ayatul Kursi, لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Okay. The idea is, the concept of God in Islam is active God, who is involved in time and space. Every moment, the circle of life and death, creation and annihilation is all in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this idea of active God, it affects the conscience of the believers. Okay, so for example, if you believe in a God who has created this universe and has nothing to do with this universe, you are on your own. So this will lead to the same idea which we discussed before a while about the Western idea of raping the nature. So we are on our own. God is not involved. What is happening? It is happening according to the principle of cause and effect. Causes lead to effect, and this circle of cause and effect. And we will discover the causes and the effects behind the physical phenomenon, and we will exploit it if God is not involved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuted this idea of retired God. And the principle from the Quran, which we will take for explaining this mas'ala, is the ayah from Surah Ar-Rahman, ayah 29. Make this as a principle, or keep this as a principle for understanding the idea of separateness. We will explain it further. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah 29, يَسْأَلُهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. This is very profound, very important to understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever is within the heavens and earth asks him, connects with him. Every day he is bringing about a matter. Sha'n means matter. That means Allah is involved in space and time. Every moment, Allah is bringing about a matter. Okay, if you go back to the tafsir of the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ, Abdullah bin Abbas, you will see they have interpreted this Sha'n to mean either creating or responding to the believers' dua, helping, supporting. Okay, and there is a narration in tafsir of Tabari, Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, and we all know his status in tafsir, in explanation of the Quran. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after creating a lawh al-mahfuz, the preserved tablet, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved and wrote his eternal knowledge about everything, past, present, and future. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks into it many times every day. I think more than 60 times, if I'm not mistaken. We can go back, inshallah, to the narration. He looks into it every moment or every day, numerous times, more than 60 times. And then he responds to the call of those who call him. He supports, he gives life, he causes death, so on and so forth. So this idea of looking into Lawh al-Mahfuz every day is the same idea of active God. Okay, so to keep this in mind, كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ, every day he is involved in a matter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considered this a great ni'mah. So our God is not a retired God who created this universe and has nothing to do with it and rested on the seventh day, so on and so forth. He is an active God. This is a great ni'mah. This is a great blessing, because the next ayah is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? Which means Allah is involved in space and time every moment. It is a great ni'mah. It is a great blessing. That's why the Sufi scholars, for example, Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, he says there are two blessings on every creature, or no creature is devoid of these two blessings. Ni'matul ijad and ni'matul imdad. The ni'mah of creating and the ni'mah of sustaining. These are the two blessings, or the basic core of the blessings, which every creature experiences. The blessing of ijad, creating, and the blessing of imdad, the blessing of sustaining. Okay, so now let's go back to the idea of separateness. We said in Islamic ideology, we don't separate God from the creation so much that he has nothing to do or he becomes a retired God. And we don't involve God so much that this veil is lifted, or this difference between creation and creator is lifted. God becomes a creature. So we have to maintain a unique type of separateness. Okay, so in early philosophy, Greek philosophy, they have this idea of the 10 intellects, the intermediaries between God and creation, in order to maintain the absoluteness and transcendence of God. Okay, because we have to maintain this separateness. Even in the ancient polytheism, which the Arabs also practiced, they believed in God, the higher God, who is the creator of everyone, all creatures. But these intermediaries are important, small gods. Or in Greek mythology, God, semi-god, demigod, all these ideas. To maintain the absoluteness of God, they created intermediaries in Greek philosophy as well. In the late antiquity, the Roman Empire, there are philosophers who believe there are roots in Aristotle and others. So these intermediaries, in order to answer this separateness. And the Muslim philosophers also picked this idea from them. So if you read Farabi and others, you will see they talk about these al-uqul al-ashara, the 10 intellects, al-aql al-awwal, al-aql al-thani, and so on. These are the 10 intermediaries between God and creation. So in order to answer this separateness, okay, or in order to create a unique type of separateness, for example. And in some Greek philosophers, they also believe these intermediaries to be angels. And there are some evidences for that. Okay, so this was the idea of philosophers. And some Muslim philosophers, they even pushed the Muslims in general to use the Aqli methodology, or the rational methodology of the philosophers, and adopt it in religion. We talked about Imam Ibn Rushd in the previous session, and his main work about reconciliation between religion and philosophy, or religion, or naql and aql, the texts, revealed texts, and the rational methodology, or aql, intellect. فصل المقال فيما بين الحكمة والشريعة من الاتصال. This is the book of Imam Ibn Rushd, in which he talks about this project of reconciliation. And later on, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah picked the same idea in his Dar'u Ta'arud al-Aql wal Naql, lifting the reconciliation between Aql and Naql. In his book Faslul Maqal, let's read some more lines from this book. In his emphasis on reflection, on using Aql, and using Aql according to the method of the early philosophers, even if you disagree with them. Okay. For example, I'm reading from Faslul Maqal of Ibn Rushd. He says about using Aql and the importance of using Aql and reflection, contemplation in the Quran itself. Okay. In response to the Mutakallimin, particularly Imam al-Ghazali, he says basically this reflection and nazar is based in the book of Allah. Allah wants us to reflect. Allah wants us to use our aql. Okay. So he says here, فَإِذَا تَقَرَّرَ أَنَّهُ يَجِبُ بِالشَّرْعِ النَّظَرُ فِي الْقِيَاسِ الْأَقْلِ وَأَنْوَائِهِ. When it has been established by the Sharia from Quran and Sunnah, that it is obligatory to reflect according to the aqli qiyas, syllogism, aqli qiyas and its types. كما يجب النظر في القياس الفقهي, like it's obligatory to use and cultivate and reflect on the fiqhi qiyas, like we use qiyas in fiqh, in extending rulings to new matters. Qiyas is a famous method in fiqh, and it's based on aql. We have to use our aql and this methodology in the matters of aqidah. فبين أنه إذا كان لم يتقدم أحد ممن قبلنا بفحص عن القياس العقلي وأنواعه أنه يجب علينا أن نبتدئ بالفحص عنه. It also becomes obligatory that if no one has created a methodology before us, a rational methodology in understanding these matters, we must create it. We must be the propounders. وأن يستعين في ذلك المتأخر بالمتقدم. But if someone has created it before, the scholars who come later, they must benefit from the previous scholars. حتى تكمل المعرفة به, so that the knowledge is perfected by it. So basically what he's saying is that we can benefit from the early scholars and philosophers who used rational methodology, even if they are not Muslims. This is his claim. And he says this is obligatory by the Sharia. And we're not supporting him, we're trying to understand the picture. Because you benefit from others in using the fiqhi qiyas. Same applies here. Okay. So then he says, we know that there are philosophers and people before us who used aqli methodology and they applied it. So we must benefit from them. وَسَوَاءٌ أَكَانَ ذَلِكَ الْغَيْرُ مُشَارِكًا لَنَا أَوْ غَيْرَ مُشَارِكٍ فِي الْمِلَّةِ. It doesn't matter whether this person is of the same religion or not. He's a Muslim or a non-Muslim, doesn't matter. Because aql and aqli methodology is mirath, is legacy of all human beings. Okay. So basically what he's saying is, Quran and our religion, it emphasizes on using our aql and aqli methodology. Either we propound it, we make it, or we benefit from others. And benefiting from others does not only mean benefiting from Muslims, we can benefit from non-Muslims. Okay. So وإذا كان الأمر هكذا, when this has been understood, وكان كل ما يحتاج إليه من النظر في أمر المقاييس العقلية قد فحص عنه القدماء أتم فحص. And it has been established, understood, that the qudama, by qudama he means the early Greek philosophers, the maqayis, the methodology, the standards, rational evidences, standards they created are the best. قد ينبغي أن نضرب بأيدينا إلى كتبهم. So it is important that we benefit from it, we use their books, we use their arguments, فننظر فيما قالوه من ذلك, so that we see what they have said. We can disagree in details, no problem. فإن كان كله صوابا قبلناه منهم. If their methodology, their understanding is correct, we will accept it from them. وإن كان فيه ما ليس بصواب نبهنا عليه. And if there are some mistakes, we will point to that, we will not accept it. Okay, so I was reading from Faslul Maqal of Imam Ibn Rushd. So the Muslim philosophers, they took this understanding, or to solve this problem of separateness or sameness from the Greek philosophers, they advanced it, or they added some things to it, but basically they, at the end, they also believed in intermediaries, which they call al-uqul al-ashara, intermediaries between God and the creation, to preserve the absoluteness and transcendence of God, and to separate God from the universe. And this separateness led to fragmentation, which we have talked before. We pointed to it before in the previous sessions. When you separate God, because philosophers also believe in cause and effect. They use the term the first mover, or the absolute mover, the first cause for God. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God has created this existence, and he has set some fixed rules which can never change, of cause and effect. Like a watchmaker who created a watch, of course a complex watch, okay, and he set fixed rules for it. Now this watch does not need the God. And eventually this vision of philosophers, Greek philosophers, it led to the modern skepticism or atheism. Okay, because if the God is separated from the creation, he has created the universe and set the rules of cause and effect. Now everything is about cause and effect. Even God cannot change the rules which he has set. This is the point. What is the need of that God? How does he affect our life? What is his need now? What we need is only understanding these causes and effects and cultivating it. So this is the separateness of the philosophers, which Muslim philosophers also cherished and applied. Okay, and the scholars of Islam, mutakallimun we call them, who stood against this idea, but they also believed in separateness. Of course, they cannot make God, creation and creation God. They gave a unique type of idea in separateness. Inshallah, we will talk about that in the next session bi'idhnillah. And we will see how Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, their idea of creation, cosmology, was more unique even than the general idea of mutakallim, because they both, Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Arabi, can be classified as scholars of ilm al-kalam, mutakallimun. They belong to this area of knowledge in which we discuss about the existence, God, the connection between God and existence, but their idea was more unique. We will talk about that. And by understanding all these great minds, we will appreciate our legacy more. We will understand the fact that what we have is very deep and profound on all levels. Now we are talking about ontology on all levels. And what is being promoted, what is being given to us in modern age, as modern science, modern knowledge, wallahi, it is, as Imam al-Ghazali says, it is madahiq or madhaka lil uqala. But when we don't know, and it is something on which the people of intellect laugh, mock. But the problem is, when we don't know our legacy, we don't understand our turath, we don't know our scholars who have great, or we know them, but we don't engage with their knowledge on a higher level. And we have fallen into naivety in understanding the legacy of even of our scholars. Like Imam Ibn Taymiyyah has been reduced to a scholar who only involves in polemics, who refutes this and that. Ibn Arabi, a Sufi, who maybe considered everything God, like the Hindu philosophy and so on and so forth. This is not the reality. If you engage with them, if you have the proper tools, you know some basic principles of philosophy and ilm al-kalam, and you engage with them, their books, you will see wonders, wallah. You will see how these scholars, they were blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with great intellectual minds, and how they cultivated Quran. At the end, forget about philosophers. As we said, they based their understanding on Greek philosophy. Forget about them, except Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd, rahimahullah, is near, because he was a faqih, he was a qadi, he was a scholar of Islamic sciences as well. Talk about mutakallimin and the mainstream scholars. You will see how they cultivated Quran, the book of Allah, in making these theories. We have great legacy, but we need to explore it. Inshallah, we'll talk about more about this idea of separateness. How do mutakallimin approach this idea? Particularly Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Arabi from mutakallimin. How do they solve this question? And what is the knowledge or theory they propound? How is it profound? How can we connect it with the book of Allah? Remember, we are revolving around one ayah of the Quran, which is كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. كُلَّ يَوْمٍ. This ayah is the philosophy which explains ontology for us. كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. Every day, Allah is involved in a matter. Active God, not a retired God. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand these matters. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fix our ideology, our worldview. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in fulfilling our duties and responsibilities. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us best of dunya and akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasana in dunya and akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure our sick and to forgive all our dead. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabiyil ummi. I don't think we left anything in this discussion today which I wanted to take. The works which I have recommended, I will recommend more inshallah with the passage of time. But the works which I have recommended does not mean we agree with everything they have written. And I have recommended few books so that we don't get confused. There is a lot of literature available, particularly from the Western perspective. And the problem with us is we don't know Arabic. We have a diverse legacy in Arabic. That's why we're forced to recommending some English books here and there. The books which we recommend does not mean we agree with everything. The only point is, by reading these works, we get a picture, a higher picture, and we understand how we reduced the ilm of aqidah also. We have fallen into superficiality, reductionism, and it has harmed Islamic thought. Okay, I think we took all the points. For example, here, Ismail Raji al-Faruqi, rahimahullah, he says, Islam constituted a genuine breakthrough from the fixation into which the world has fallen, divided as it was between Indian religiosity and Hellenic religiosity, and the Eastern religions and the Western perspective. We talked about this. Yes. As we have said, Q&A, we will conduct a session while we are discussing matters. You take notes, inshallah. Ishkalat, confusions, you note it with you, and then we will keep a full session on discussing about the masail. Naam. Yes, I think we have discussed everything for today, inshallah. Khair. Some I will take questions. Inshallah, we'll discuss. We'll have one full session for that. Sheikh, how can we understand saying if aql has much role in understanding things, then whose aql is it? If aql has so much role in understanding things, then whose aql is it? Inshallah, we'll have a full session on aql only, understanding aql. Yani, the purpose is also to understand the fact that what we have as Muslims, the sources, are more definitive than what is being promoted. For example, aql, Western sciences, empirical sciences, they are promoting it as if there is no disagreement, or it leads to definitive knowledge. This is not the case. There is serious disagreement even in about the mahiyya, essence of aql. What is aql? How do we define it? Then how does aql work? And is aql potential, energy? Does aql mean the basic al-ilm al-daruri, the ilm, which is basic to a human being, so on and so forth. So there is disagreement even about the object of knowledge, which is aql. Then we have serious disagreement about knowledge. Is knowledge possible? What are the types of knowledge? We will discuss it in epistemology. Okay. Science, empirical sciences, serious disagreement about sensory perception. Can we understand things as they are? Does sensory perception lead to definitive knowledge? Serious disagreement. And on the other hand, we have definitive sources, wahi, revelation, khalas, definitive. You will have a person who denies wahi, says, I don't believe in wahi, I don't believe in prophethood. And a person who believes in prophethood says, I believe in prophethood, I believe in wahi. But you will not have a person who says, I cannot define wahi, I cannot define prophethood, I cannot define Quran, which is wahi from Allah, because it's definitive, fixed. So on the other hand, we have, on one hand, we have the sources of knowledge, the knowledge itself, methodologies. Most of it is leads to only dhann, speculative knowledge, not definitive knowledge. But it is being promoted as if it is real. Okay, as if it is the aqli methodology. Most of us, because we don't study the Western sciences, we're not acquainted with it, or our own legacy, we think that everything which is based on perception is aqli. We don't know that the Renaissance itself, the modern empirical sciences, was a separation from the aql itself. Rationalism, yani it was a revolt against rationalism. Aqli methodology is something different. Okay, so the modern lifestyle, the modern sciences, philosophies, most of it only leads to dhann, conjecture. It can be mistaken, serious mistakes. It can lead to disasters. And what we have is definitive. Wahi is definitive. No one it's either rejecting it or accepting it. Okay. So this is also, inshallah, what we will discuss. We will have a full session only about aql, understanding aql disagreement. And the focus will be, of course, from Islamic perspective. What do our scholars say about aql? Other things you can learn, inshallah, if you are interested. You can listen to the Western scholars. It's always good going back to the original sources of a thought, the works written by the Western scholars in support of modernity and the critique of modernity. There are Western scholars who they are against modernity. There are works. There are Muslim scholars. I don't know. Do we have some experts? Wallahu alam. But there are some da'is and scholars who take these matters. Listen to them, understand. Our purpose is understanding our legacy, connecting with it. Okay, because this is my area of expertise. So let's stop here, inshallah. Discuss more about this separateness and the unique ideology of mutakallimun in understanding the hierarchy of this existence, or understanding the meaning in this existence. Wallahu ta'ala alam, wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabi al-ummi, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.